Welcome to the Positively You podcast. I'm your host, Jessie Larson, and I'm passionate about helping you shift the way you think so you can create a life you're absolutely obsessed with. Each week, I'll be bringing you a guest or a thought that's going to help you feel more optimistic and equipped to take real action. Get ready to push past limiting beliefs, ditch that negativity, and start showing up as the best and most positive version of you. Girl, let's do this. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Positively You podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. And today you are in for a treat because the guest that I had on, we had such an amazing conversation about parenting. I was able to talk with Wendy Snyder, and honestly, we could have probably talked for hours. Wendy Snyder is the host of the podcast, The Fresh Start Family, and she is a positive parenting teacher, a family coach, and her goal is helping families parent with greater purpose and intention by creating healthy, respectful, and cooperative relationships. She's certified in redirecting children's behavior and the Joy of Parenting program. She founded her online business, Fresh Start Family, so that she could spread the message of positive parenting around the world. She's the developer of a variety of online positive parenting courses, and she also has a monthly membership program to further support families. And honestly, she is just a delight all around. She gets super vulnerable, shares her story of hitting rock bottom, picking herself up, loading herself up with tools, and just equipping herself with this tool belt of all of these different things that she can do in order to have the parenting experience and create the family legacy that she really, really wants. This conversation will give you so many tips. You're going to love it. Let's just get right into it right now. Here you go. All right. I am so excited to introduce our guest on the podcast for today. I have Wendy from Fresh Start Family on, and we're going to talk all things parenting, motherhood, family, and I'm just thrilled to have you here. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessie. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a good chat.
It sure is. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are or is not familiar with Fresh Start Wendy and Fresh Start Family, do you want to introduce yourself and just give us a little info on who you are and what you do?
Yes, I would love to. So I'm a positive parenting educator and family life coach, and I love teaching positive parenting. I love doing life coaching with parents, and it is just my jam. So I own a company called Fresh Start Family, and we have just the honor of supporting families from all over the world now. It's an online education platform where we have courses and an online membership program, and I just love supporting parents so they can fill up their toolkit, I say, so they can truly be at choice. Because I think my heart drew me to this work because I think when my kids were younger, so the way I found this work is I really hit like rock bottom as a mother. I was blessed with a strong-willed child. She was my first. And I was just so surprised by how hard it was. And I thought I was like, kind of, I don't know, if I put my head down and I worked hard, I thought I really could reach success with anything I wanted to do in my life. And then parenthood was like, no, this is going to take more than just working hard. This is going to take some heart change. And I just really hit rock bottom when my daughter was about 3, and I just didn't know what to do with her strong will. And I really, at the time, just thought I had the classic choices, which I like to refer to as kind of the hand-me-down tactics: fear, force, bribery, and rewards, right? Threats, yelling, you bribe them, you reward them, or you make sure they know who's boss. And that's how you get a kid to comply. And I just started trying that stuff thinking, I'm good with kids. I'd always been good with kids. I was a springboard diving coach for a long time, but with my own, it was not working. So timeouts were a freaking joke. Spankings were like the most awful thing. Like she enraged, like she became like the hawk. I was like, oh, this is not working. It just was such drama. And I just kind of fell to my knees and said, God, what is happening here? I need some help. And so thank God I got introduced to a positive parenting class, got into the work, and the light just returned to my days. And what I realized is that I really was at choice. If I was able to fill up my toolkit with tools that were based in connection and empathy and grace and compassion and firm kindness and consistency and strong boundaries, all these kind of things, that I really didn't have to refer or rely on those classic four, that I had all of these options. And for a power person myself, this is one of the reasons why I love to work with families who have strong-willed kids, is a lot of times they themselves have a strong will. And that's me, right? Like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My daughter is a freaking mini me. It's hilarious, kind of. But I have a strong will. And if I feel like I have to do things a certain way, it's hard for me to relax. But when I feel like I have a lot of options and I get to choose what feels right with my heart and what aligns with my faith and who I am and how I want to respect my kids, it just feels really good. So that's what I'm all about, is helping parents expand their parenting toolkit so they can really be at choice. And we do that through teaching just a crap ton of positive parenting tools and strategies and mindset shifts. And on top of that, I'm a certified life coach. So I do a ton of like work with parents on the deeper level, where there's limiting beliefs that get broken. There's protection behaviors that get brought to the surface and changed into learning behaviors. We just do a lot of like looking at where certain habits or behaviors got started in our lives and why they exist, having self-compassion with ourselves, those type of things. And yeah, so here I am. It's been about a decade since I found this work, and my kids are now 10 and 13. So my daughter is a teenager and she's a delight. She is literally like one of my best friends and just like thriving in the world, which is so cool, because I'm telling you, I have 1,000 horror stories from when she was a toddler. And I thought, like, I really did Google, like, is she possessed? I Googled bipolar. And now she's just this dream kid who I just could talk about for hours, like how it's who she is, but this work, thank God for this work. Because if I would have taken a different route with her to like get her to change or behave in a different way, I just can't imagine. And then my little guy's 10 and he was born and raised with positive parenting. So that's what brings us to today. Here I am.
That is amazing. And I love that story so much, because isn't that the goal, that when our kids reach those teenage years and beyond, that we want to have these relationships where you're able to say, I love her. She's a delight. We get along. We have this amazing family bond. But 10 years ago, you were like, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not going to be the case. So I love that, because I think that that's the destination that all of us want, are these really strong, happy family bonds where our kids are thriving, where we feel like we're thriving. And so, yeah, like you said, like, thank God for this work and like for people like you that are doing that. So I want to ask, if I'm brand new to this and I'm like, okay, what the heck is positive parenting? You say that it's a bunch of tools in your toolkit, which I love. I'm all about collecting all the tools to help you live like the best life ever. So I'm curious what you would define positive parenting as, and what some of those key tools that we can start to bring in are.
Yes. So in layman's terms, because there's like 1,000 different ways I could describe it, but I like to think of it as positive parenting is finding the middle ground between too firm, which we call autocratic, right? It's a lot of the way many of us were raised, like my way or the highway. If you challenge authority, there may be pain at some level, whether it's physical or mental, like you're going to pay the price if you challenge authority. Too firm. Too kind is what we call permissive. So that's where kids rule the roost, walk all over their parents. There's not a lot of rules. They're allowed to get away with a lot and not really be held responsible. So that middle ground is what we're looking for and what we teach in this work, which is kind of democratic land of parenting. So firm and kind. So how do we set strong boundaries and do it with consistency? And that's kind of one way I like to think of it. It's also based in positive psychology by a gentleman named Dr. Rudolf Dreikurs, which was a mid-century renowned child psychiatrist. So he really taught us about what the underlying root causes are for human behavior. So needs, every human being has needs. The need to belong, the need to feel powerful, the need to feel valuable, the need to experience unconditional love. And when those needs aren't met, then we as human beings, we will misbehave. It's the same with children as it is with adults. So if we are not having our needs met for that day, and then the barista does something weird at Starbucks, like we're likely to like spout off with an attitude or cut someone off the freeway. So we're really just in the same boat as our kids. So it's based on positive psychology, and it's all about assuming positive intent in our children. You know, it's like, I think the classic way is actually assuming negative intent. So if a child messes up or a child misbehaves, the classic paradigm is really a misbehaving child equals a bad child, and that equals a bad parent. So that's where the classics like, well, you need to get control of your kid comes from, because if they're having a hard time, that means you're doing a crappy job. The new paradigm in positive parenting, again, assuming positive intent in these human beings and ourselves, is that a misbehaving child equals a communicating child, equals a parent who can creatively and peacefully problem solve with their children. So it's, and it's through connection. So it's based on connection. It's based on relationship. That's like one of the hugest definitions of positive parenting, is that the magic really comes in with the relationship. And I can tell you, again, I've been teaching this for a long time. I've been practicing it for a long time in my home, but I can see it more than ever now, how the years of putting in the work with the relationship are now paying off big time with the teenager. It's nuts. She tells us everything. Like, we are her she wouldn't say right now, you're my best friend. Like, she's still she's my cactus kid. Like, she's still just like very like independent and on her own, and like she's just amazing. But so she would never be like, my mom and dad are my best friends, but she runs to us when she has an issue or a problem, to bounce ideas off us, to let us know. So it's just the relationship. So we always say rules plus relationship equals respect. Rules minus relationship equals rebellion. So that's a lot about what it is, but it's all of that.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. That rules plus respect equals relationship, right? That's
Rules
did I say
plus
that right?
relationship
Plus relationship
equals respect, which we all want. We want that respect.
Yes. Well, and I love what you're saying with that so much, because I think, yeah, we do come at parenting so often as like, I'm the grown up, I'm the one in charge, and as the strong-willed one. And then, yeah, when we get those kids that are strong-willed, it kind of throws us for a little bit of a loop. And really, do you think it takes a little bit of like humility to kind of step aside and be like, all right, this like force and this force is not working? Because I think, I don't know, how was that for you when you had to kind of shift from the four things that you said weren't working into positive parenting?
Yes. Well, it is true. So humility is a superpower, right? Mother Teresa talked about how humility has the power to like change the world. Humility is a superpower, and the world and kind of like culture has almost positioned humility to be weak. So if there's a misconception that as a parent, if you are humble with your children, that makes you weak or permissive, which it really is the opposite. When you are humble with your children and let them know that you are learning right beside them, then it's straight magic. They actually respect you more when you show up as like a real human being in front of them. And when you say to them, hey, look, sometimes I know what I'm doing and sometimes I don't. And I'm going to let you know when I don't, or I'm going to let you know when I mess up. Again, they are way more likely to respect you when you're like, hey, look, I really know what I'm talking about here. It's like, my daughter is a great example. We've like really mentored her on how to use an e-bike here in Southern California. The e-bikes are like nuts. We should all buy stock in e-bikes right now. I'm telling you. Super 73.
Getting there now.
Seriously, they are, trust me, you guys are going to thank me in 10 years when your stocks blow up. But we've really mentored her on how to like have her own like self-control and understand how to ride a bike out in the world. And you can see how, like, the other day we saw her crossing the street when Terry was going to work, and all of her friends were going when the walking guy wasn't on, and she looked and she was tempted, but she stood back at 13 and waited, which is a big deal for a teenager. It's a big deal. I forgot why I got on that subject, but back to like the humbleness, that's what it was. So sometimes, I've said to my kids plenty of times, gosh, I don't know what to do here, or I made a mistake, or yelling's just a habit. Like, that's not okay. You don't deserve to be yelled at. And then there's other times when I'm like, look, literally kids die on the road if they're hit by a car. I had a little girl when I was growing up hit by a car. Like, mom knows what she's talking about. I need you to wait for the walking guy when you're on that e-bike alone. And as long as we've got that, you're good to have freedom out in the world. So my point is, it really does make them respect you more. And then as far as like having humility to step to the side when things are really intense, we call, probably what you're referring to is those power struggle situations and I have a free workshop on this I can tell your listeners about too. That's really powerful. But I teach parents like what it actually looks like what a power struggle looks like. And it basically is anytime you're like, hey, do this, child. And they're like, no. And you're like, yeah. And they're like, no, I won't. And they do it in their own ways, right? Like some won't put on their shoes. And others are like, no, I'm not getting in the car. Like, I want to just keep playing. There's 1,000 different ways that they can say no, but that is a power struggle. And the classic way is to just up your game with the fear and force and the threats or the raising your voice or the bribery and rewards. And it's like it's a power over your children, which doesn't work so well as they become teenagers. And it really erodes the relationship. Now, we teach you how to take that, like when you're like, oh, here we are, we're in a power struggle. This is my child wanting to feel powerful. It's not them being bad. It's not them pushing my buttons. It's they're communicating to me that they're wanting and desiring and asking for power in their lives, which is a human, healthy, God-given need. So you get to look at that and say, okay, well, how am I going to handle this with integrity? How am I going to dissolve this with connection and creativity and firm kindness, but not overpower my child? So to do that, to step to the side is the first step in dissolving a power struggle and breaking up the routine. And that does take humility. So a lot of parents like to even do that in the first place. And it can literally physically look like stepping to the side and going in the kitchen and getting a glass of water while you take a few deep breaths and just think about how you're going to handle the situation when your kid has looked you straight in the eye and been like, no, I'm not. And your past is like, oh, you don't say no to me. You literally are like, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Listen. You grew up like that. Like, you literally, if you said no to your mom and dad, it was
like the fear was struck inside of you and you were like, what did I just do? Because I'm going to die now. Yeah.
And then our same amazing parents wanted us to grow up and be confident saying no in high school and college, right? And we're like, but wait, no is a bad word. It's all, it messes with you. So we do it differently. Yeah, we teach our kids that no is a healthy word.
Which it's so interesting the way that parenting and how we want to communicate with our kids has evolved. And something that I love so much about what you said about owning up to your kids when you don't know something. Yeah. Like, we just come to it and we're the grown up and we get a kid and we come home from the hospital and we're like, great, we're supposed to know what to do. And we don't know what to do. And I think that being honest with our kids that when we don't have all of the answers or we don't know or we need to apologize, that's a rough one when you need to apologize to your kids.
Yeah.
But I think that gives you more credibility, kind of like what you were saying, when you do know. Because then your kid's not eye rolling all the time, right? Like, oh, my mom thinks she knows everything. That when you're like, yeah, no, actually, listen up, kid, because here is where I do know. And when I don't, you're going to know it. And I think, like you said, that helps that relationship bond kind of grow because you're both coming at the relationship as humans, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And that's what creates true respect. So I teach a lot about true power versus, like, there's a book called Power versus Force, and a lot of classic parenting is force, not true power. So true power is what you're talking about, where you actually influence your children and they look up to you because they just flat respect you. They respect the kind of human you are. They respect how much you love them. They respect how wise you are, how much you do know. That's way different than being forced into compliance and respecting you because you're an elder and because they have to. You just want to show your kids, like, you want to influence them with true power. And that's what happens when you have humility and all the tools: compassion, connection, empathy, teaching with logical consequences versus punishment, that type of stuff.
Awesome. I love that so much because I'm thinking of instances where we want someone to act a certain way, but we want them to want to do that, right? Like
Yes.
we
Yeah.
a classic argument, right, with our spouse, like they should want to do the dishes. I shouldn't have to tell them to do the dishes. They should want to. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what I'm hearing with power versus force is that gets them to want to respect you, not feel fear that they need to respect you, which
Yes. And let's just go into that one a little example a little bit more, just to give a little bit more context. So the classic, right, would be do the dishes or else. Like you won't have any iPad this weekend, or like you're going to go to bed early, whatever. Enter in your favorite threat. But like we know how to do that. It's like the back of our hand. Again, no one needs to train you on how to threaten a kid or, threaten a consequence or a punishment, right? So that's power over. That's fear and force. So, and that's how you influence them. You want them to like actually unload the dishwasher and put the dishes away. The other way would be like, hey, let's work as a team. Let's get this done. And then afterwards you say, or before, you could say to them before, hey, look, how do we feel when we walk in this kitchen? It's like straight chaos. Like if you needed a fork right now, where would you get it? You'd have to go like find one at the bottom of the dish and then wash it, or use some random old like plastic fork that's going to break when you go to cut your pizza or whatever it is, right? Like that, like how does it feel right now in your body? What are your thoughts? Like, is it going to be easy for you to grab a sandwich before you head to your play date, or to find your goldfish, your favorite goldfish, like in this very messy kitchen? And then after, okay, well, let's work as a team. Let's take care of this. You get it done. And then afterwards you say to them, okay, look, let's look at how do we feel now in this kitchen? And if you needed to grab something, where would you get it? And also we worked as a team. Like, thank you. Because what happens when mom is faced with all the dishes is I get super overwhelmed and I end up snapping. Like, remember last night I totally snapped on you guys at bedtime. You know why? I think I was just overwhelmed. I think I was just scared that I can't handle all of this by myself. And sometimes I get so tired, and it just helps me so much when we work as a team. So thank you. Thank you for being part of my team and for helping me, because now when we go upstairs, I just feel like I have more energy to like read books with you guys. And it's like maybe we even have time for 2 more books because we worked as a team. So thank you. Teamwork matters. And it does. It's very important for mama to have a clean kitchen. And I know it brings us all peace. And I know you're learning that. But as you get older, you're going to learn that cleanliness and clutter-free kitchens and spaces bring you peace. So thank you for listening. Let's head up, right? Like you're teaching lessons, you're thanking them for being part of your team. You're helping them by helping them realize that you are a human who gets overwhelmed. Here's what you found out is one of the ways to take care of yourselves. It's just an example to give you there, where when your children walk away from that example that night, they've got a lot of context on why the heck parents care so much about dishes.
yeah. That's so amazing. And I'm glad that you broke that down a little bit, because as you were explaining it, I was visualizing that whole
Yeah.
conversation, that whole experience taking place. And also on the flip side, kind of visualizing the alternative of the do the dishes, you're part of this family, it's what I told you to do, and not going anywhere. And so I think like, wow, taking the time to have those conversations with your kids, like, wow, that makes such a difference. Just even how I'm like picturing both of those two scenarios playing out.
Yeah, it really does. And it's like life is made up of 1,000 of those little situations, right? And I know for a lot of us, we're like, man, can't they just do it? Can't they just, instead of, I don't want to explain for 20 minutes, can't they just do the dishes because I said so? Well, honestly, a lot of times, no. It's just not the way human beings are. These are children with developing brains who have a lot going on in their lives. And it's a lot of times it takes less stress to just chill ourselves out a little bit and remember we're on the same team, shift our mindset a little bit, then think that the instant obedience is what's going to give us the magical peace in our lives. Instant obedience is overrated because it usually comes along with fear and force.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And something that I'm thinking of is a phrase that I say to myself a lot is, am I helping present me or am I helping future me? or present family or future family, right? And so I think with that instance that, yeah, a lot of parenting could just be these snap quick things where we don't want to put in the time, the conversation. We just want to win the battle, right? We're just wanting that instant behavior, that instant gratification. But like you said, in the long run, it's maybe not giving us the best result for the future versions of us and of our family.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like the opposite, maybe, if maybe you're not a big threatener or yeller or whatever, but you do bribes and rewards a lot. Like the other side of that is, just like kind of training our children to always expect something. Right. And that gets exhausting as your kids get older. Because then one day they're like, well, what's in it for me? And you're like,
yeah,
nothing in it for you. Like, you're just going to drive your sister to practice because I drove you to practice, like whatever. You just do it to be part of the team. Right. But I love that. I'm going to use that, Jessie. Am I doing this for present me or future me? Because that's really powerful. It's really powerful.
Oh, I have to call myself out on that all the time. So.
Well, it's very motivating. It's very motivating. I like it.
It is. It's kind of one of those like, oh, okay, just called myself to the floor a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then, say I'm a mom who I have looked forward to being a mom my whole life. And it's not feeling like what I imagined it to feel like. I'm feeling like I need to go get a full-time job because this is not filling my cup. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling whatever. Insert whatever overwhelming, dissatisfying emotion you want to be there. Where do you come in and where do you start? And where should parents and moms look first? Is positive parenting something that you would hope we all kind of move and be more proactive about? Or is it like, all right, I'm drowning. Where do I get help now?
It's such a good question. So, okay, when I did like my whole business plan for Fresh Start Family years ago, I had a mission and I had a vision. And the vision for Fresh Start Family is that one day the world will all we will have positive parenting education in high school, like whatever. I don't know. I'm old, I guess. But when I grew up, we had home ec 101 or the 101 classes. Like you had to have basic skills in home ec or basic skills in art. Like my dream is that yes, one day in high school and it's definitely college, there will be 101 classes that you just have to take. You just prerequisites. You have to understand the psychology underneath human behavior and understand basic parenting concepts that harness the power of connection and empathy and compassion and relationship and all these things to raise human beings. So that's my vision. However, my mission is to serve the families where they're at, which is 99.9% of the time they are in crisis, which is exactly where I was when I found this work. So we have a podcast too. It's called the Fresh Start Family Show. My husband co-hosts with me, so it's kind of fun to have the guy voice on there too. But episode 1 talks about my journey to find this work. And I like I said at the beginning of this episode, I was exactly where you're talking about, this mom that's dreamed of it and is just literally miserable. And so what I would recommend is when you get the invitation is to just say yes, right? Like this podcast episode right now is the perfect opportunity to just say yes, just to step into learning. And there are just so many amazing resources out there now. I'm just one of the positive parenting educators out there in the world. There's 1,000, there's a lot of positive parenting educators. So if my vibe's not right for you, just go find someone, Google it, go to the library. But there are just so many. But we have a free strong-willed kids guide, because I think a lot of times if a mom is like, whoa, this is way more intense than I thought it was going to be, I have found in my work, again, we've probably been able to serve close to 50,000 families now. 90% of the time, they have a strong-willed kid in the home. So I really love speaking to those families. I usually find that the ones that have a little bit more of a peaceful, chill experience with motherhood, they often have sometimes just not that super strong-willed child. And just remember, the strong-willed child, is a blessing, not a curse in the world. They are often the ones that are able to make a lot of big changes in the world. They're the ones that often become big, strong, big leaders. The world needs all types of human beings, and strong-willed kids are just one example. But to raise them is really intense. And so our free guide to raising strong-willed kids with joy and integrity, I always say without losing your mind, is a great place to start with people. It's right on the homepage of our website, freshstartfamilyonline.com. We have that free Power Struggles workshop that I talked about. That's like a 1-hour workshop where if families are like, hey, I have power struggles all day long, like 50 times a day, anything from eat your vegetables, put on your shoes, stop touching your sister, do your homework, whatever it may be. Then again, you probably have a strong-willed kid, and I can teach you some basic concepts on how to like get out of those power struggles with integrity, how to step to the side of the dance, and that free workshop. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes too, but it's freshstartfamilyonline.com/power struggles class. So those are kind of the starting points I always encourage people to do. They're free, right? Like, why not? But you do want to just step into learning. You do want to do something to step into learning and start trying new things in your home. You want to pull on that courage to switch things up, take a break from some of the things that aren't working well for you, that aren't filling your heart with joy, that you, when you go to bed at night, you feel a little funny about. You might have a little shame or guilt or stress or even blame about. That's usually a signal that there's room to probably just consider taking a break and like putting in a new tool. And that just is going to take learning.
Yeah. Well, and something that I love that you just brought up is feeling a little bit of that shame and a little bit of that guilt. Because, okay, so the woman who's listening to my podcast, the Positively You podcast, is someone who does embrace that learning and wants to grow and evolve. Same with probably, I'm thinking, your audience, right? They already know that there's something they want to learn and implement. But I'm thinking about the mom that isn't there yet, who, is just frustrated, who isn't searching, who is just lost. And as you mentioned shame, I think about a lot of times we don't want to say that we're struggling with motherhood. We don't want to say that we lose our mind and yell at our kids and say whatever the thing is, because we don't want to share that side. But I think there's power in being vulnerable. And this just came up with me as you were talking about, if we can be vulnerable about our struggles and then about where we're finding help, that's where we can help find the other people who might, need that nudge in order to get there. Because like I said, the people who are already subscribed to my podcast, to your podcast, who are already searching, they're like the 2 or 3 steps ahead. And so if you're that person that's already 2 or 3 steps ahead, if you're listening to this, be vulnerable, be open about the struggles and what's helped you, because in that vulnerability, you can help lift up another mom who might need that help. So there's my soapbox. Hello.
You just described my company to a T. So our membership program, right? So it's called the Bonfire. It's a support, like month-to-month program. We have families from all over the world now. I think we have 15 countries represented, and you would love it in there because holy smokes, is it vulnerable? Like we have families that show up, and I think a lot of times the new families come in and they're like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow. And then they probably see like what happens after people get comfortable, and they're like, dang, all right. I guess I'm really going to tell you what happened last night at bedtime, or I'm actually really going to tell you the thoughts I have about my child and I do not like them, or whatever it is. Like, it is such beautiful vulnerability in that group. And that has resulted in massive success. So that same group, we have a Google Doc that my team and I keep track of success stories, and it's 640 pages long now.
Wow.
Of families who are like, oh my, they get vulnerable. They say like, this is not working. And it's not just a little messed up. It feels really kind of jacked up. And I'm actually turning into my mother. And I always swore I was, or like I'm repeating the same things that I hated being done to me as a kid or whatever it is. And they're like, hey, I'm here to be vulnerable. And then that turns into this like crazy transformative success story. And it's just really cool. But yeah, shame and blame often like hang out together too. So when we have shame about something and we're not like really open about what's really going on because we feel like something, it might be that we're not good enough or whatever, it will cousin next to blame. And it's because we'll blame it on our kids. It's because our kids are so crazy, or it's because our husband's not supportive. And those two things together will just really mess with you. So yeah, get them out in the open. Fresh Start Family is like, if you come over and hang out with me on Instagram, you'll see it's a pretty dang vulnerable place. I've written articles about how I've left bruises. I've written articles about how I threw a book at my child. Like, I straight up will tell you I am not perfect. And it's still like, I've worked so hard to get rid of shame for that. And it's still like bubbles up. But parents need to know that you don't need to be perfect to change. You just have to be willing to like step up to the plate and say, hey, there's some stuff going on that's not okay with my heart. And I need a hand. So.
Wow. I love it. And I can like sense all of that emotion welling up in you. And I'm just floored with what just stepping up to the plate can do for us and for our families and for the entire world if we're all willing to step up to learning and to being okay that we don't have all the answers and we don't know, and that we're all just trying our best. Like, oh, I'm here. I'm so here for all of this.
Yes. I have a quick story too that just came up. What time is it? I guess we have maybe a few minutes. This is kind of a weird story, but it made me think of this because I think a lot of people may hear about this type of work and they're like, I don't know, that seems like a lot of work. Like, well, I mean, that's like, I just want the kids to listen better. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes I can feel that vibe when people start to see like what we do as far as supporting families and the programs and the courses and all these things. But my friend, one of my best friends that we grew up with, my husband and I have been together for 26 years. And we went camping this last weekend with one of our best friends. And his name's Jordan. And he goes hunting like by himself in the like woods of like Northern California alone for like 6 days to hunt elk or pigs or whatever. And I cannot relate to him at all. I'm a pescatarian and I'm like, I don't even basically buy meat. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is because he's telling this story about how he hikes in, he's all alone. He was scared to death of bears this last trip. And at the very end, he was able to get this boar that fed his family, him and his wife, Annette, who we love. It fed them for like a year in their freezer. And the kids are asking him, my kids are 10 and 13, they're just sitting there asking him like, why would you want to go do that? That sounds awful. And there's a whole story about he lost the pig and it started rolling down the hill and he had to put it over his shoulders and carry it down the mountain. And there's like, it was just gnarly what he went through. And he barely sleeps at night and all these things. And we're like, why would you do that? And he's like, it is the best feeling in the world to be able to provide for your family and to be out in nature and just to hike to the top of a mountain, to have the views that you do. And it's just an experience like it's no other. And it just reminded me of, it's like, whenever positive parenting is oddly kind of similar, where some people are just not going to be into it. They're going to be like, I'm cool with just doing things the way things have been done. And it's not a big deal for me if I threaten or use fear and force or use pain to motivate my kids. And other people are going to be like, I'd like to really spend the time, and the feeling at the end is what I'm looking for. And it really does. I feel like I've gotten to that end feeling, right? Where I'm at the top of the mountain. Granted, my daughter is still a teenager. I know there's going to be challenges over the next whatever, but it just feels like $1,000,000 to have these relationships with these kids that nothing can rock your family. Like nothing. Like it feels so strong. And it feels like I've spent the last 10 years hiking to the top of Mount Everest. And now I just am able to like sit and enjoy the views. And there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. But yeah, it was a lot of work to hike up there.
Yeah.
It was actually joyful too, right? I think you look at the people that hike Mount Kilimanjaro and you're like, why would you do that? That seems like a lot of work. And you just don't understand unless you're one of those people, like the massive rewards that no one could understand unless you actually go do that type of thing. So weird story, but that was on my heart.
No, I love it. If you've been here for 2 seconds, you know I'm a sucker for analogies, so I completely love it. And it is. I mean, we have an image, hopefully we have an image and a vision of what we want our family to look like when our kids are teenagers, when our kids are grown, and it's worth it to put in the time and the effort, even though we might be really exhausted and we just want to be done, that the work is worth it for the end result. So on that note, where can we find you and find more about positive parenting and all of the things that you offer?
Thank you so much for asking, Jessie. I know I mentioned some of the links earlier, but come hang out with me on Instagram. I love hanging out. I feel like we can really get to know each other there. I love to hang out in DMs a lot. I'm known to voice memo a lot if you have a challenge or want to ask me a question. I love voice memoing with people. So I'm at Fresh Start Wendy on Instagram. And then, like I said, the homepage of the website always has something free. So freshstartfamilyonline.com. Right now, it's the free guide to raising strong-willed kids with integrity. And then lastly, that free Power Struggles workshop is like the most value-packed hour. Come hang out with me. freshstartfamilyonline.com/Power Struggles class.
Perfect. And yes, all of it is linked in the show notes and over on my website. Wendy, this conversation was so good. Thank you so much for taking the time. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. You are such a light, Jessie. So thanks for all your work.
Thanks, Wendy. Thank you for hanging out with me again today. I'm so glad you pressed play. If you want to take a quick second to share this episode with someone you think would love it too, that would be amazing. If you're loving the show, make sure you go and leave a review on iTunes. Reviews are like magic for podcasts, and your review will help get this show into the ears of more amazing women just like you. And come find me over on Instagram. I'm there at positively.jessie, and I cannot wait to hang out with you some more. So until next time, have an amazing week.